We are starting a brand new series here today called Life's Too Short. And we're going to talk about some big stuff over the next couple weeks, 5 different topics that are going to apply to every single one of us. We're going to deal with fear, and we're going to deal with worry and insecurity and comparison here today, and missing the moments in our life that are in front of us, and making too big a deal out of small things in our life, and all the things that can cause us to live a life full of regret. How many of you don't want to live a life of regret, right? Yes, I'm with you. I don't want to regret. I don't want to waste my life on small things. I want to live for something that matters, and I don't want to get to the end of my life and be filled with regret. Now, I know there'll be little moments of regret. If I could go back, I'd do that different, but I don't want to be flooded with regret when I get to the end of my life. When God goes to take me home to be with Him, I don't want to look back and say, wow, my life's just littered with regret. And none of you do either. You don't want to have regret in your relationship, regret in your workplace, regret in terms of accomplishing the purpose that God has for you in your life here in this generation. You want to live, don't you? You want to make a difference with your life, and you want to live in such a way that you're not a harm to other people, but you're a blessing to other people. That your relationships aren't littered with dead bodies along the way that you harmed or that harmed you, but instead is filled with life and blessing in every single relationship. And yet, life is fragile, isn't it? Life is short. All of us have lost loved ones before their time, and the reality is we know my days are numbered, your days are numbered. I don't know how many the number is. I'd kind of like to know, but the majority of me would not like to know, right? But it's numbered. At some point, this life will be done. And so what are we going to do with the life that's given to us? And so over the next couple weeks, we're going to have some key conversations together. I hope that every one of you will commit to be here for these 5 weeks, because they're going to apply to every single one of us. In some ways, you're going to go, man, I just wish they had come to service with me. I wish that person had come. This message is for them, right? You ever have that feeling? You hear a message, you're like, oh, this would bless them. No, receive it for yourself. Open your heart, yourself to it, and realize some of them are going to be encouragement, pat on the back, and other times, I or Jesus, by His own strength, is going to stab you in the heart a little bit along the way. You're going to feel a little conviction, a little disappointment, a little bit like, I need to press through, I need to pray about that. Receive that as a gift from the Lord, because the Lord loves you, and He disciplines because of His love and His care, even in the midst of when it doesn't feel kind in the moment. It is kindness at the end of the day. We're going to start our series in a really big conversation here today about the fact that life's too short to compare yourself. Life's too short to compare yourself. If you have a Bible this morning, you can open it with me to 1 Samuel chapter 18. We're going to spend a few moments in this unusual moment here in the middle of the Old Testament. Samuel's in basically the middle of the Old Testament. We'll have the verses on the screen in just a moment. Comparison's a big deal in our culture, isn't it? I mean, somewhat to do with social media, to Instagram, to Facebook. Might be just the knowledge that we have available today to be able to Google things and look things up and realize what life could be, what that person makes versus what I make, what house they live in versus what house I live in, what kind of clothes they're wearing versus the clothes I'm wearing. All the stuff that life brings about. Comparison has become a huge issue in our culture, hasn't it? And I'll bet everybody in this room at some moment or on repeating moments has been caught by the temptation to compare yourself to someone else along the way. And yet the reality is life's too short to spend your life comparing yourself to others. Because as I compare myself to other people, I end up forfeiting the uniqueness of who I am and who God made me to be in my own life. Just my own moment of truth here this morning. I'm generally a pretty content person. I like to succeed. I like to push things forward. I always want everything to be better around me. But personally, I generally feel very content with my relationships, content with myself, feel like I just am who I am. I don't need to be like somebody else. Don't need to look or talk like them. I'm not tempted to want to wear what everybody else is wearing. Just speaking of my own self. But the last month, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because I needed an illustration for the message today or just because it was something I was wrestling with my heart, but on Instagram, I began following some people, some pastors. Pastors deal with comparison as well. Following some pastors and looking at one person in particular, and I was thinking, why am I not more like them, right? This is a weird thought because I don't generally go down those roads. I'm like, why am I not seeing God, maybe I don't have the same giftings that they have. I don't have the same personality. Maybe I should have a little more personality like them versus the personality like I have. Maybe I should act a little bit more like them versus act the way that I am. I generally don't live there, but I found myself over the last month doing that repeatedly. Now, I don't know the person. I don't know what they've gone through. I don't know their life. I don't know what it's like outside of the camera, outside of the picture that's posted to Facebook. By the way, people only post the best pictures to Facebook and Instagram. Isn't that true? Like, I never go home and I'm like, guys, let's post our worst moment. Like, you're all crying, you're huddled, you're saying, Dad, I don't love you today. Like, why didn't you buy me this? Like, why are you so mean? I'm like, let's video that and let's post that online right now because I'd love a lot of people to like that, right? We post our best moments, and yet I found myself looking at the best moments of someone else's life thinking, what would it be like to have that life versus the life that I have? Just caught, trapped. And I'll bet some of you are like me. Maybe your details are different. The kind of person, the situation would be different. But we all are prone to some form of comparison with the people around us. It might be how someone looks, how thin they are, how strong they are, how much they work out, don't work out, right? It might be, once again, the kind of job they have, the kind of money they make, the kind of house they live in, the kind of car they drive, the kind of place in the city they live or the place in the world that they live, all the things that happen. It might become more personal. I wish I had a marriage like their marriage. I wish I had kids like their kids that always behave all the time. It's a lie, but I wish I had that. I wish my situation wasn't so complicated. I wish it was more clean. I wish I hadn't gone through this difficulty or this challenge or that heartbreak, right? Or that health ailment, or I wish I hadn't lost my loved one. They didn't lose their loved one. I lost my loved one. Why did that happen to me and not to them? And some of that can turn not just towards ourselves in terms of insecurity or frustration with others. It can turn towards God at the very end, can it? It's like, God, why did you, if you're in control, why this for me like this, right? And the comparison goes on and on and on. The problem is, and if you're taking notes this morning, the problem is comparison, it makes it impossible to enjoy what you have, doesn't it? Comparison makes it impossible to enjoy what you do have. You begin to look at just what someone else has or someone else's life and think, well, I wish mine was more like that, and you forget about all the good things that are in your life, all the blessings you do have in your life, all the things that are going well in your life, and you stop enjoying and being grateful and thankful for all that is happening as you look over to the other side of the road, to the other person and what's happening in their life. And not only does it make it impossible to enjoy what you have, it makes it impossible to enjoy who you are. And that's deeper stuff. Not just what do I own, not just what do I have, not just what job I go to, but who I am. The Old Testament gives 10 commandments, right? There's all kinds of commandments, not murder, all these things. In the middle of it, at the very end, it says not to covet. Not covet your neighbor's horse, mule, all these things. I'm like, I've never done that. Check, check, check. Never wanted someone else's animals, all those kind of things. But the Lord's getting at something really deep. Because at the end of the day, it could be not just about the stuff. It could be that I could start coveting their life. And when I covet their life, that brings about all kinds of dangers in my life and in the relationships that are around me. As I walk the road of comparison, it leads me to a direction that brings a lot of harm to me and a lot of harm to those I love as I find myself walking away from the path of peace that God brings by his Spirit. The good news is the gospel of Jesus Christ is the opposite of this conversation where comparison can make such a big difference. Jesus is going to say through his life, his death, and his resurrection that you are worth dying for. You are valuable. You don't have to be like someone else for me to love you, that who you are is who I love. Jesus said he left heaven and earth. He so loved the world, as broken as it was, including you and me, that he came to earth to pay the price, to say it is finished. You don't have to do anything else to be approved before God. Which brings me to this story in 1 Samuel 18. Really fascinating moment in the life of two men. One's named King Saul, And the second one is David. He's a young man growing into adulthood, young manhood. Maybe he's 18, 20 years old, whatever the case might be in the story. And David has had this huge moment in 1 Samuel 17. It's the moment of every kid's dreams where he goes up against the Goliath, right? This big, giant man, 9 foot tall, and he goes out there with just a few stones and his big God. They're like, a few stones aren't going to do it, David. He's like, I'm not putting my faith in the stones. The God who's with me is going to defeat the giant. And he goes out and he defeats Goliath. An impossibility in the eyes of everyone around them other than the eyes of God and the eyes of David. But he goes and does what God tells him to do, and he defeats that Goliath. And Saul's like, man, who are you? Thank you for joining my army. Thank you for going out. Because the reality is, if David hadn't gone out and defeated that Goliath, at some point, the pressure for the king, if no one else volunteered, the pressure of the king either to pick someone forcefully or go out themselves would have been mounting, and it was mounting. Saul's got all his armor there, all the thoughts about maybe he would have to go out and do it, but he didn't do it. David did it. So Saul says, but I don't want you to go back home to work for your dad. This is a great victory. Why don't you stay here with me? That's what happens at the beginning of 1 Samuel 18. Why don't you stay here with me? Why don't you be with me? And he begins to put him on the head of military campaigns, and he's being successful, and all these things are happening. And Saul recognizes this talent inside of David and the strength inside of David. Pastor of this church, we have a great staff team. I think about it on a regular basis. We just have an incredible team of people who are sold out to Jesus, have authentic faith, who are trying to live it out in their personal lives, and then are making a difference with their life. And not just our staff, but all of our volunteers and people at every door, people in our parking lot, people in kids' rooms saying, God, use me to make a difference. We have this incredible team. And I think Saul looked at David and said, I need to build a good team. And you're the kind of guy we need on our team, right? Guy that makes a difference with your life. That's where it starts. Comparison's going to wreck it. And it's going to destroy the relationship that could have been between this Saul and this David. 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 6. When the men were returning home after David had killed the Philistine, that's Goliath, the women came out from all the towns of Israel to meet King Saul with singing and dancing, with joyful songs and with timbrels and lyres. Anybody grow up in a church that had tambourines? There's a couple of you. I've talked to a few of you. Tambourines, man, when you bring out the tambourines. Now, I didn't go to a church that had tambourines. There may have been a lady with a tambourine, but not a lot of ladies with tambourines. There's one here or there, but I've been to some who had tambourines, and man, when the tambourines come out, the roof blasts off the building, right? You can't compete with a tambourine, the excitement. And what's happening in this story is the women are coming out, they're like, we defeated the Philistines. The impossible was made possible, all these good things, and they come out with their tambourines, their musical elements. There's all this excitement happening in the moment, and they've written this song to commemorate what's happening in the moment. And they say Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Uh-oh. Here's uh-oh. Because you never sing about anybody bigger than you sing about the king, right? And they said, David's done all these things. They're just trying to celebrate it all. And Saul's done a lot too. And it says Saul was very angry. This refrain, this song displeased him greatly. They have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands? What more can he get but the kingdom itself? And from that time on, Saul kept a close eye on David. It's a scary comment at the end. He kept a close eye on David. By the way, anytime you keep a close eye on any person like this is always dangerous territory. Because when you have your eyes on someone focused on their life, focused on what's happening, focused on what's in their heart, he's trying to check out, do I trust him? Do I not trust him? How is he getting ahead of me? How is he doing this? How is he getting a bigger song than I'm getting? His close eye on him pulled his eyes off of his big God, didn't it? And when I do the same thing, when I compare, when I look at the life of other people, I begin to take my eyes off the only one that matters. And my gaze is not up towards the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. My gaze is down at another human being, and that begins to fracture everything around me. He says, David's getting 10 times the praise that I'm getting. I mean, he just killed a Philistine. I mean, he was a big Philistine, but he wasn't that big. He's frustrated. Why would he get the credit? Even if he killed more people than me, why would he get a bigger song than I get? I'm the king in the middle of it all. And so Saul, in the middle of his insecurity, anybody ever wrestle with insecurity? In the middle of his insecurity, in the middle of his fear, ever wrestle with fear? In the middle of his fear, in the middle of comparison, he goes from friend of David, companion of David, teammate with David, to enemy of David in the matter of time it took to sing a song. Comparison. This is a turning point in Saul's life, by the way. Everything from here is downhill. Now, beforehand, it wasn't going so well either. He's had his moments, a lot of rebellion, a lot of turning away from God. But this moment, from here forward, there's not another recorded good moment for Saul. Everything from here is down. This becomes this moment he thinks is no big deal. How dare David get this big song? But the thing that changed in Saul's heart and life, that moment changed the whole rest of his life to the very end where he dies, continuing to be an enemy David at the very end of his life. We read the story like, well, why do you care, Saul? Like, just let him get his song. It doesn't matter. You're still the king. That would have been a great choice for Saul. Just like, let it go. But he doesn't let it go. In fact, he's going to make it a bigger and bigger deal, as we're going to read in just a moment. This comparison thing is a trap, and it's a road that leads ultimately to a fracturing of relationships and distance from God, and a lot of bigger things than we ever imagined were possible through just the simple act of comparison. I invited some people to come up front to help me here this morning display this road of destruction that ultimately comes for all of us, this trap of comparison that are going to come up to the front. Thank you for coming up here. Can we put our hands together for these guys? Great. You're switching? Okay. Now everybody would have to change what they're doing. Okay. Okay, thank you. He doesn't like where he's going to be. There you go. Look at this. Comparison. Man, it almost got us all. The trap of comparison, the road of comparison leads to some really tough stuff for every one of us. I'm going to give this is the first person in our line, Crystal. Going to put our hands up for Crystal here this morning. Yes. Okay, and so she's going to represent contentment. Isn't that awesome? Can you give us some contentment here this morning? She is so content and happy and grateful. Life is supposed to be lived if we're in Jesus Christ and the world of contentment. This is where God wants us to be, content in who he is, content in what he's doing in our life. Doesn't mean we're complacent. That's a whole different conversation. Doesn't mean I'm going to sit down, I'm not going to change, I'm never going to do anything else, because God has some things he's refining in our life, he's changing in our life. But I say, you know what? I'm a son of God. I'm a daughter of the King. I'm made in the image of Jesus Christ. I'm forgiven. I'm saved. You know what? I want to do things with my life. I want it to count, but I'm content with trusting that God has provided the way that he's decided to provide, given me the health I'm supposed to have, placed me where I'm supposed to be, that I can look at other people and dream other dreams. But you know what, God? I'm mostly for what your dreams are, your desires are. I'm content. If you don't change anything, then this is where I'm going to be, and that's fine, because you are a good God, and I stand there. That's a great place to be. Better than all the rest of them are going to be along the way. Contentment. The second step, we'll pass it over here to Josh, is comparison. That's our word for today. So Josh, you're in comparison. You're looking at everybody else, thinking about this track of height that's going up along the side, thinking about everybody else and the way of life. Comparison. What just happened?
He put me.
He's making, okay. Oh, good example. Comparison. Sometimes comparisons makes me feel worse about myself. Sometimes comparison makes me feel better about myself. Both are evil on their own. They all lead to the wrong conclusions. Comparison is a place where we find ourselves so often. If we went around the room and we talked about our own stories and our own journeys, where we are right now, what we're thinking about, where life is, where we imagine would be. Sometimes we're comparing ourselves against even who we thought we would be. So other times we're all comparing ourselves against other people that are around us. Why am I not as smart as them? I'm not as wealthy as them. Why don't I look like them? Why don't I talk like them? Why am I not have the magnetic personality that they have? Whatever the thing is for you, comparison ends up changing the trajectory of your life. This is what happens ultimately. The people start the comparison. Saul doesn't do it, but he latches onto it, and he takes it so seriously. A lot of the commentaries, right, you know what, it might have been the people just went out just to make this big exclamation point, like, man, God is doing so much, 10,000 and thousands. Maybe they weren't trying to even rank them. But Saul heard the ranking in the middle of it, comparison. Comparison's tough. Let's pass the ball down the road. This next word on the line, the trajectory of comparison, the next word is discontentment. Discontentment, Meredith, you feeling discontent? Yeah, Meredith's feeling discontent. And comparison is the enemy of contentment. Some of you need to hear that this morning. Comparison is the enemy of contentment. You want to be content in your life? You want to feel peace and joy and gratitude for what you have? Comparison is the enemy of all of that. It works against it. It causes you to look at other people, think of what could have been, what should have been, what I wanted versus what is, all the kind of stuff that happens. You know what? It makes you wake up and say, well, I wish I was this way. I wish I was that way. I wish I did that rather than that. I wish I made that decision. And discontentment starts to sink into your life instead of contentment where we all want to live, that place of peace, just a little moment of comparison leads you to the place where you're at home, you're staring at the ceiling, while you're laying in bed, you're thinking about your life, you're thinking about where we are, and you begin to feel discontentment. And discontentment is just not what we were made for. Discontentment, we were made for peace and joy and life. And God can change our steps, but even in the middle of him refining us, we find contentment in that versus discontentment along the way. Let's pass the ball down the road. This is Luke, and Luke's feeling the next layer, and you never see this layer coming, but the next layer is resentment. Resentment. Yes. Like, I'm resentful that I got chosen for resentment, I think is what happened. Resentment, it's like taking your ball and going home, right? It's like all the things that happen in our life where I say, you know what, it just started, I just saw something on Instagram, or just saw something something in my workplace. They got the promotion, I didn't get the promotion, and it starts a little train that leads to resentment. Resentment then gets personal, where you begin to be frustrated with the other person, not just disappointed with yourself, but frustrated with the other. They took my job. They took that relationship. I should have dated them in college. That would have worked out. They got in the way of that. All the things that happen through resentment, and resentment begins to kill every relationship around us. And resentment is super dangerous for every one of our lives. You know, comparison is actually competition. Did you know that? It's competition. Competition always has winners and losers. And when I get down the road all the way, I'm not just discontent, I'm not just comparing, but I'm getting resentful. I've now mapped out the world or the people around me in a competition where I'm like frustrated that they're winning and I'm losing. And then it might cause me to do whatever I can to flip that, to make them the loser and me the winner. And that's where it plays out if I have the power to do it. Let's pass the ball to the last one. The reason Doug doesn't want to be this, at the very end, Pastor Doug here on the end, the very end, if you play it all the way out, okay? It started as just a little comparison, a little discontentment. And if it grows to resentment, it leads to destruction. Yes. He's going to have no fist when he's all over. It leads to destruction. Comparison starts small, but it leads to destruction. What happens in Saul and David's life? Saul and David's relationship is destroyed forever. Not David's fault. David was doing everything in good faith, trying to help the people of God, doing what Saul asked him to do. He asks permission. Saul sends him out. He kills Goliath. He goes on the raids. He's continuing to be used by God, used by Saul. He's not warring against Saul, but Saul shifts it, becomes resentful, and then begins to destroy the relationship in a very personal way. And that's what happens with comparison. Comparison brings destruction. And what does it bring destruction to? It brings destruction to your relationships and my relationships. It begins to destroy when I'm competing with a friend, a loved one, somebody at work, somebody who's an enemy, whoever the list of people we might begin to list out. It brings destruction there, kills those relationships, begins to fracture them. You think, well, it's not that big a deal. They don't know. You know, people feel things that they don't understand. Distance in relationship, the destruction that brings. It brings destruction to the joy in your life. It just kills and sucks the joy out of your life. For all of us, we've all felt a moment of discontentment, and some of us relational, and we know it begins to steal and suck the joy right out of your life, moment by moment. The longer you sit there, the deeper the hole gets as it begins to destroy the joy in your life. And ultimately, it begins to destroy the unique person God made you to be. And that's the most dangerous part of all. Because then in the middle of it, it just started as a little comparison, but it ended with losing yourself and the chasing after becoming someone that God did never even intend for you to be. To look like someone you were never supposed to look like, to talk like someone you were never supposed to talk like, to live someone else's life that you were never supposed to live from the very beginning. Contentment, comparison, discontentment, resentment, and destruction. This is the road. The Bible says Satan himself prowls around. He's trying to steal, kill, and destroy. And this is what he's going to do to Saul. Let's put our hands together for these basketball players. The passage here at the end, 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 10, you're going to see it play out for Saul in a very, very personal way as it continues the story. It says, the next day, after all this happened, he heard all this song. An evil spirit from God came forcefully on Saul. There's all kinds of things we could talk about, but things began to go the wrong direction for Saul in a hurry. He was prophesying in his house while David was playing the lyre, as he usually did. Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled it, saying to himself, I'll pin David to the wall. But David eluded him twice. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with David, but had departed from Saul, the end of verse 29, and he remained his enemy the rest of his days. I read a book one time some years ago about, I think it's called These Three Kings. I may have that a little bit wrong, but it's about Saul, David, and Absalom and the journey and what happened through them. And he made this point, I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. He said, somewhere along the line, if someone hurts you, you're going to have to choose what's going to happen. You get in comparison, you feel that frustration inside, you're going to have to decide, are you going to be the kind of person that forgives and lets it go and trusts God, or are you going to be the kind of person who picks up spears and harms the people around you? We talked about destruction. This is where Saul is. He's resentful. He's got a choice, and his choice is to pick up a spear and remove the one godly man, soldier he's got around him, who's been living to help Saul along the way, who killed that Goliath, and he picks up a spear and he throws it at David. And apparently he did it twice. There's another story later. He's going to do it again. Saul he goes from king, chosen by God, to comparing, to discontent, to resentful, to destructive, where he begins to pick up spears to take everybody else out around him. It's big stuff. I mean, it's a big change in one man's life over a short period of time. And this is what comparison does to all of us. It says in the story, the weirdest part, it says this evil spirit comes upon Saul. It's like he had walked the road so far, made so many choices. I'm sure God's saying, Saul, you don't need to worry about it. Like, you're the king. You don't need to worry about one of your soldiers killing tens of thousands of people. That's not even true at that point in David's life. They're just singing it. He hasn't killed tens of thousands. They're just singing it. So you don't need to worry about it. You're the one I chose at this moment. He could have been part of the baton passed to David down the road, a lot of other pieces of the story. But he chooses, no, I'm discontent, I'm frustrated, I'm angry about it. I'm resentful of the people singing it and of David for allowing it to happen. And then in the middle of it, he had a choice to make, And he makes this choice. And it says an evil spirit comes forcefully upon Saul, not making him. We're not reading it that it was God sending it to make him harm David. It's that God's giving him over to everything he's chosen. And now an evil spirit comes upon Saul and gets just a little bit of ownership in Saul's life and drags him the further way to destruction. It's big stuff in all of our lives. My kids, we wrestle sometimes at home and we play, don't we, Levi? We wrestle and we do stuff. We get on a bed or on the floor and we'll wrestle and we'll do all those things. And my kids are of an age, like, they're going to wrestle me a little bit, but if I really wrestle, like, we know the end, how that story's going to end. I'm going to win that, and there's going to be comparison and resentment. No, we're going to wrestle and those things. And so I give them a chance, but the reality is at this age, I can take them, wherever they are, I can take them by their legs, and I can just pull them wherever I want in the house, like. It's pretty fun, actually. Rug burns, not as fun, but I can pull them, and so sometimes I'll do that, like, I'll just grab them, the littlest ones I can pull from their legs, and I can just hold them straight up, right? It's just part of the game of being a dad. This is what it's saying here is happening to Saul. It's like Satan himself grabbed around. We call it a foothold. He's got a foothold in Saul's life. He's walked a road, rebellion, disobedience to God, so many steps, and this is just one more example. Starts comparing, gets resentful, and then Satan himself just gets a little foothold in Saul's life. And Saul's going to try to destroy someone else, but Satan's going to destroy Saul. And this is the hardest part about all these issues. You think comparisons are really that big a deal? Apparently it is. And it leads us down roads that we never imagined we would go to, and places we never imagined we'd be, harming ourselves and harming others in ways we never imagined possible. I'm sure when David came off the field that day, killing Goliath, Saul never pictured in his head picking up a spear and taking him out. But here he was doing exactly that to David. Comparison kills every single time. It kills us, our loved ones, our joy, our relationships. It strangles our future. It gets us stuck in the wrong direction, moving away from God rather than towards the promises that God has for every one of us. And I just think God would want to say to some people here today that he just wants you to be free of that. He wants you to be released of that, no longer shackled by the need to compare. Instead, to feel confidence. God, you made me. I don't understand why you made me this way or that way. That's fine. You can have those conversations with God. But God, you made me. I've got it. I trust you. You know what you're doing. You're good at your core. You're always working for the good of those who know you and are called according to your purpose. Like, that's just who you are. So I trust you in the middle of that. And I'm just going to say, God, will you help me to find contentment? And when you don't feel content, and that'll happen every day or every week, many times, when you don't feel it, say, God, will you remind me who I am? Because I've forgotten who I am. I'm yours, created by you. Psalm 139 says we are fearfully and wonderfully made. That we're knit together. God knit us together, not just biology, that God was intricately involved in the details of your conception and your construction of who you are. He knew you before your mother knew you, before your father knew you, before anything in the world could have perceived your existence. God knew you, called you by name, and was calling forth purpose inside of you. And we say, God, when I forget who I am, when I start looking at someone else, when I start thinking I need to be like them rather than just be the person you've called me to be, will you remind me who I am and whose I am? I'm yours, God. You own me, and that's a good ownership. You have me, and I thank you for it. These are the things that God would call all of us to, which brings us back to the gospel. Everything comes back to the gospel, by the way. Every conversation comes back to the gospel of Jesus Christ. What does the Bible say to each one of us? Well, it says that I'm a person for whom Jesus died. That's valuable. The God of the universe died for me. I'm not as good as them. I don't look like them. I don't talk like them. All those kind of things. He died for me because I am valuable to him. My worth is established. My future is secure. His approval is the only approval that I need in this life. That's the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I don't know where everybody is spiritually here today. Maybe some of you you're coming to church, you're trying to ask questions about faith, trying to figure out how to have a relation with Jesus. Well, we're going to give you that opportunity this morning. And that's an important decision for everybody to make. But if you made the decision to become a follower of Jesus, you go, I know I'm not perfect. I don't have it all together. Not everything's all the way that I imagine it would be, but I am his, and he has me. And I am secure, and I'm approved. And he says over my life, it is finished. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to earn anything. You don't have to do anything further than otherwise have just a relationship with me, and then I have you. And we'll talk about how to live differently, and we'll talk about how to do those things, and I have plans and purpose for your life. But what you're never going to hear from me, God would say, is someone else's name out of comparison. In fact, that's what the gospel declares to us. God isn't comparing you to anyone else. He's not comparing you to anyone else. He's not thinking Crystal, you should talk more like Cindy, or Cindy should talk more like Christina. He's not doing that. Every conversation he has with me, even when he calls me to repent of sin, to live a different kind of life, to walk a different direction, he's never going to say, Brad, why don't you just live more like so-and-so lives? He's going to say, maybe why don't you live like my son Jesus lives? But barring that, you're not going to hear any other names because God's not comparing you to anyone else. That is freeing. That is joy-inducing for everyone who really recognizes the depth of the meaning that has for every one of us, that he is not comparing you to anyone else. You are a unique creation of God, made according to his purposes for you, wonderfully and fearfully made. And you might wish that was different or this was different, and I get that, but that leads you down the road of discontentment. And instead, embrace who God says that you are. Embrace what God has put in your life. Be grateful for those things, and those things will bring about what you're really looking for, which is happiness and fulfillment and peace and joy. That thing you're really thinking is going to be on the road of being like someone else is found in being uniquely the person God made you to be. Be that person. Be the best version of that person, and don't try to be like anyone else around us. I think that's what God would say to me and say to you. Brad, just trust me. Spend time with me. Let me change your character, conform you to the image of Christ, but you don't have to be like anybody else. I won't love you anymore if you are. In fact, you'll be walking further from and be like, who are you? You're not supposed to talk like that or look like that or be like that. That's them. You're supposed to be like Brad. And Brad is uniquely, wonderfully, fearfully made. And so we say, God, help me to stop spending time comparing myself to anyone else and instead rest in the goodness of my Heavenly Father who made me and called me, and rejoice in the freedom that all that brings to my life and yours. Isn't that good news? That is the message of Jesus Christ. It is finished, and you are adopted. And those who are adopted will never be put to shame. This is the message of Jesus Christ. Let's stand to our feet all across this room.